Hi everybody. Today I have Julie Walker from Purple Spinnaker. Now, Julie is a thought leader and guru in the area of social media. I've worked with Julie quite a bit now on looking at how social media can be applied to customer experience and how we can assess how operators and companies are doing in their social media strategy and how tactically they can redesign their programs. Today, Julie's going to go through some of her social business frameworks, and we'll have an open discussion on how she can help you in your programs and how you can gain best practice in social media. So firstly, Julie, perhaps you just give a little intro to yourself, and then we'll get into the webinar and the information you provided in your slides. Julie.
Oh, thank you, Stephen. Yes, I've been working with online communities and social media now for about 15 years. I started looking at how online communities could help organisations increase and develop loyalty with customers around 2001, 2002, and that's led on to working with different companies on different projects looking at how to use social tools, online communities and social channels in order to engage and understand customers better and complement other internal data and voice of the customer data in helping customers innovate, improve productivity and customer service and marketing.
Now, Julie, before we get into the slides, we hear a lot about social media and its ability to revolutionize business models but where are we actually at the moment in social media? Are we in the new environment, or are we getting there, or is things still a little bit immature?
I think it's still quite immature as an area for businesses to adopt wholeheartedly. One of the key things about social is that social offers multiple different channels which allow you to listen to and engage with your customers. There are two types of channels. One are the public channels, which are owned by third parties like Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and Vine, and those sort of platforms there which allow you to create a page and engage with your customers in those environments. And then the other one is where you actually create a community of customers on your own domain, on your own website, and that can be a public customer community which is used for customer support or ideation or gaining some insights and getting customers to get involved in surveys, or private communities where you invite customers into a private space where you have a conversation with them about a particular project or product or marketing campaign.
Fantastic.
So what social does is it allows you to have multiple channels in order to have a conversation with your customer.
Okay, and one thing I've also found is that social, certainly in setting up queries for the business area I'm in at the moment in telecommunications, you can set up queries to extract data publicly from all sorts of different environments, whether it's about the network, technical issues, or whether it's about brand, or whether it's about marketing, or whether about customer care. It's almost like a single view of the customer to be shared between departments. Is that fair as well to talk a bit like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the key things to actually look at with relation to social is which area of the business is looking to understand a little bit more about what their customers' view of their product or service is. So, for example, in the area that you're working in, which is looking at operators and the performance of networks and the impact of technical faults or other issues that may be around those networks, then the key there is to be quite structured in how you go out and seek those conversations to gain an understanding of what the normal conversation is around those topics, and then to be able to identify where there's a spike in conversation around something that might actually have happened or be happening at that point in time. So what social does is it does allow you to be able to gain insight from customers' conversations for different areas across the business. So a lot of the searches that you set up are specific to your area of a business. Somebody who's working in marketing or product development or in another area of customer service will be looking for other signals within the social data for them to understand more about what the customer's perception is at that particular point, or what that group of customers' viewpoint has been over the past 3, 6, 12, 18 months based on the type of conversations that's been taking place.
Fantastic. Okay, so let's get into some of the slides now.
Yep. Okay.
So conversation strategy. So would you just like to talk a little bit about so from conversations to communities with purpose? If you'd just like to talk a little bit about this slide, and we'll go slide to slide, just starting with this first concept.
Okay, so basically underlying any relationship that we build with an individual or a group of individuals or an organisation is conversation. How do we actually do that? So in order to try and establish what is common between two parties, you can start to have a conversation. So those conversations help you identify, do we have a common interest? So from a brand's perspective, you might want to find out if a customer's talking about your brand, or if a customer is interested in the type of area that you sell into. So for example, you may be a manufacturer of golf products, so you might want to find out whether or not somebody's interested in actually playing your sport, or whether they are actually currently learning it or thinking about learning it. So those areas allow you to listen in to find out who's talking about something where you have a common interest. So that's what conversations allow you to do, which is identify common interests. And that's exactly the same online, where you can go out and search for people who have an interest which is common to what you're interested in with respect to your brand, company, or product.
Okay, so let's just move on. I mean, we should say from conversation to communities though before we move on.
Yeah.
Because conversation is potentially one way. You post on the social media, but I think this is moving more into how you create those communities to affect that two-way conversation. Is that what you're kind of implying?
Yes. Exactly. So if you look at social data or social conversations online, it's a bit like a needle in a haystack trying to find the conversations that relate to you. So what you do is you strike up a conversation with your customers. So your customers may come onto your Facebook page or through your Twitter account, or they may come straight onto your website and your community if you have a community on your site. And by having a conversation with them, you can find out where you have those common points of interest. And once you have identified what those are, you can then start to build your community around those common areas of interest. Okay,
I think your next slide sort of indicates some of the where it is this is beneficial. Companies, what do we create and build? So affects products, inform and sell, and service and support customers. Yeah. So from the customer point of view, what should I buy? Who sells it, who provides after-sales care. So this is creating that community. I mean, are these communities, though, very nascent at the moment? Do people actually use them effectively, or is it just for a younger segment?
No. I did some research a couple of years ago with Kingston Business School, where we identified the profile of community members. Now, we have established that people that engage in online communities, not social channels like Facebook, but actual communities where people have that common interest. So organisations like Sky have a technical support community. You will have different professional bodies who may have a Facebook page or an online community that support accountants or lawyers who are going through their sort of like studying for their exams. And you might have, and there's an online community called Gearsluts, which is aimed at production engineers and post-production engineers who talk about technical products around their area. And if you look at the demographics of people that actually join an online community, the majority of people are over 36. Mm-hmm. They tend to be more educated, sort of degree educated and above, or definitely post-school education. There might be technical college in there as well, but they tend to be people who are looking for a richer piece of content in those communities. So when a company comes to look at where do you engage with customers, you can listen to customers on the broader social channels, so your Facebook, your Twitter, and you will get some signals about the key topics that people are talking about, but you can then bring those people into your community on your own website, where you can actually start to engage them in a much richer way, which is where you have the opportunity to actually start to talk to customers about the products that you have, how do you tell them what it is, where to buy it, and also have the ability to be able to demonstrate how you service and support those customers as well.
Now you have a little model.
So it's not just for the younger audience, sorry.
No worries. So you have this social conversation matrix is the Purple Spinnaker model for it. And I think this is an example from a telco where we did some work, didn't we, looking at public communities and on domain, those owned by the telco. So there's a difference, wasn't there, between where people in the telco raised an issue, could be a complaint, mostly probably is, whether that was on domain, so therefore controlled and owned by the company, or whether it's off domain in public channels, which therefore mean, as we can see here, that the customer care will only have a focus, if it's hashtag to customer, only of a small or possibly a reasonable size percentage, but not the whole area, the whole universe of where comments are being raised. I think in this particular case it was 60 websites where people were raising issues about the telco, and the telco, because they're only looking at customer care, had no visibility of that, no ownership.
That's correct.
Therefore could not do any trend analysis on it, and also, probably critically as well, could not respond to them through Hootsuite or through their customer care to get greater granularity of detail. That's my experience of this social conversation matrix, a very useful framework to apply. Any more details on this that you'd like to add, Julie?
Yeah, I mean, I think what the conversation matrix really is about where those conversations are taking place and between the type of people that are taking place. So, for example, if we look on the darker blue on the right-hand side of the matrix, you'll see that these channels are independently owned. So they are channels which are either created by an individual or by a group of individuals around a particular topic. So in this instance, we can see British Expats, Gear Sluts, Mumsnet, Breast Cancer Care. Those are online communities which bring together individuals who are interested in those particular topics. On the public channels, on the public communities, we see Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, etc. And these channels there are channels where individuals are talking to other individuals about particular topics, and within those conversations they may or may not be talking about your particular business. And those conversations there give you an insight into what individuals are talking about outside of your own domain. And then if we start to look at the conversations which are led by companies, these are on channels that an organization will manage and sort of set the conversation tone for. So you will have public communities on the social media channels, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Google, or LinkedIn, depending on what your business is, and then you'll also may have your own public communities on your own domain and website. And so these areas here are customers talking to customers generally, or customers talking to employees. And in these channels, we have organisations are having much more interaction with the customer and can have a richer conversation rather than try to interrupt somebody in, say, for example, Mumsnet to go and talk about a mobile phone offer or whatever. You can do that on your own channels, but not on a third parties. And then the last bit is areas where you might want to invite some of your customers into having a more private conversation around product development or testing products or particular areas that you might be interested in for market research. So, and at that point in time, you have a much smaller group of customers and a much more involved and conversation and deeper conversation at that level as well. So what this does is it allows you to actually understand where the conversations are taking place, who's engaging in those conversations, and then where the richness is in those conversations.
Fantastic. Let's go to the next slide then, because I think this is a similar slide, or is there some key differences on this one?
No, it's quite similar. It's just got a little bit more detail on the on who's leading the conversation at different places.
Okay. And in terms of how we wrap this up then, for this part, you've got this social conversation sphere concept. Do you just want to, I guess this is sort of a high level view of where you should look for those conversations and bring them down into where you get most value, which I guess is at the bottom there in terms of the online co-creation community. Have I got that right?
Yeah, that's correct. If you think about, it's a bit like throwing a pebble into a pond, and is it you make the deepest, the deepest dent in the water where the pebble goes in, and then everything spreads out and it gets lighter as it goes further away and as it ripples out. And it's the same type of idea here, where you have conversations taking place on the outside of your ripple, and then as it comes in it gets deeper and richer. So this is the different layers of conversation that are taking place, and
Yes.
there's a lot of conversations out there, so it's very difficult to identify you're searching like through a very large haystack to find that particular needle, but as you're bringing it closer and closer in, your haystack's getting smaller and smaller until it's just like a bale of hay, where you
Yes.
actually can start to engage a lot richer and find a lot more value or get to your point quicker.
Okay, and I think this is the same thing, but just gives an overview of an example client in terms of how many, what sort of data, whether it's YouTube subscribers, Facebook likes, Twitter followers, that this targets, I'm guessing here, through to actually devising and managing an online panel for product development and so on and so forth. Now, a lot of people in Voice of the Customer may say, well, we send out surveys. We get our data that's statistically reliable and valid from surveys. Social media is sort of unprimed commentaries. We communicate and get that two-way conversation. Sounds like a lot of effort. Why don't we just get people in a room and do some focus groups? What do you say to that? Is this a substitute for all that activity, or is this a complement? And if it's a complement, how? What's your view?
I think at the moment it's a complement. I think that people are familiar with focus groups. Consumers are familiar with being invited in by different organisations to come into a room, test some products, give some feedback, and in exchange for that they might get some vouchers or some free product in exchange for their time. So I think that focus groups are definitely a very good way to engage customers, especially on a very personal level, because you have a smaller group where you can have quite a lot of rich conversation. Where the digital channels come into play is it allows you to actually listen to conversations and identify key themes and topics that you might not necessarily associate with your customers or your brand. So that's one of the key areas. The second thing is it allows you to get access to a group of people, or perhaps over a longer period of time, that you can engage them. So for example, you might want to create an online group of people where you get them involved in the testing of a product or the testing of an idea of a product, and you could maybe get, say, 1,500 people over the course of 3 to 6 months engaged in that process.
Yes.
It's very difficult to get that number of people to come into an agency on a weekly basis in order to get that sort of feedback. So what you can do with this is you can get 24/7 access to customers, you can have a larger group of people available to you over a longer period of time. So I don't think that it will, in the short term, remove the face-to-face focus groups, but I think it gives you a very strong alternative when it comes to looking at product development ideas, testing marketing messages, and getting feedback and iterative feedback. And in this world where we're looking at agile development of applications, when we're going much more digital and online, then being able to present a website design, user wireframe of an image of an application, or to ask customers for feedback on digital products, then this is a very, very efficient way to get access to a good group of customers to get feedback on an iterative basis over a period of time.
Okay, before we move on then, closing off this social conversations model, who does it really well? Who's best practice and why?
Sorry, ask that one again.
Yeah, who does this activity in terms of conversations very well? For instance, I think it's giffgaff is one example.
giffgaff is an interesting model because giffgaff was created as a a mobile company, a mobile phone company, where the community and the customer is at the heart of the business model. So therefore, it's driven by customers helping each other and supporting each other online. And it was, and that's a very effective model. But that was set up as a new business with a new business model. And it works very, very efficiently. The key benefits there are reduced customer support, engaged customers who give feedback across product marketing, and it's all done in the public domain, so therefore everything's available, and it's a very interesting model to look at. However, not every organisation or industry has the luxury of being able to set up a business from the start with no legacy systems or anything else. So if you look at organisations like Starbucks, who have adopted a customer community, they have a very large Facebook community, but they also have an online community on their website where they engage customers in product ideation, asking people for feedback, and they react on that, and they're very good about telling customers how they're doing that. Also, you have other organisations like Sky, Vodafone, Virgin. All these organisations too have online communities where they are bringing customers into the support area of the business and also extending that out into product development as well.
Okay, so is the real benefit to the companies who are really best practice, have they found it in OPEX reduction, reducing calls into call centre, or on the cost advantage of that, or have they found it in revenue growth from the ideation that's come from that?
I think predominantly, in the telco space, I think the area has come in very much on the call deflection and having multi-channel access to customers. So where it would all be going into a call centre, we've now got the ability to have call centres, live chat, and online communities, and also through social channels. So having an omni-channel customer service is definitely offering organisations operational benefits and reducing costs in there. But when you look at other organisations, there's Sephora is a beauty makeup company, a retail company in the US, and they have sort of shops now across the world, and Sephora have a very sophisticated digital omni-channel proposition, but where they make their money is in the community members actually increasing the revenue that they spend in the shops and spend online. Okay. So a normal community member will probably spend maybe 2 to 3 times what a non-community member customer might do. But a super user of the community who's engaged in the community on a regular basis may spend up to 10 times what a normal customer would do per annum. So therefore their engagement with the customer is generating higher levels of revenue from the community members, which is different to what you're getting in the telcos, where they're focusing much more on the customer service side.
And I understand also, I guess it enables micro-segmentation or defining new segments of people. I remember the example, I think it was Air France, where they had Singapore business executives, and they created a club around that. Is there segmentation, defining new markets, a benefit here being used?
Yes, I think there is. There's an opportunity to be able to identify smaller groups of people and to be able to service them a lot more readily. So you can identify what they're doing and be able to engage them. So, for example, you might take a small group of your customers, which Air France did it with some people coming from Singapore. Other organisations might take some travellers that are interested in running. So, if you look at some of the airlines, I think it is actually Air France as well, they tried to have one where there was a running club, so executive club members that are also interested in running, they would give them key places to run when they land in different locations. So there is a way to be able to actually segment your customers and be able to offer them a service at a much lower, a much more targeted level.
I suppose also to find people who are difficult to get. I'm thinking particularly in healthcare, where people with specific conditions may be able to create a community around those, where it'd be more difficult to find them in a normal focus group type manner, I'm guessing.
I did a project with around people with lupus.
Yes.
and we basically wanted to find out what people who had lupus, what we had a number of questions that we were looking to answer about people who had lupus. How did it feel when they were first diagnosed? What kind of medication? Where do they get treatment? And where do they get help and support? And the way that we looked at doing this was we set up a web page and we set up a Twitter channel, and we looked for the hashtags that people with lupus used online.
Yes.
We then used that in order to engage with those communities, and then we asked them to put on a video app onto their phone so that we could ask them questions and then go back and feedback. Ask them questions that way, and use the social media channels plus also the video channel in order to get that focus group working to answer the questions. So yes, it's a very good way to be able to identify a broad group of people who might be in a very small segment in order to be able to get access to them.
And I guess it's public information, so there's no data restrictions on contacting these people.
Well, no, well, if you follow them on Twitter and they choose to follow you back, so we set up a Twitter account which had lupus in the title.
I see.
We were very open about the fact that we were looking for people to get involved in a study, and we engaged them that way, and we ended up having, I think, about 300 people following us, and we ended up with about 30 people in the study over a period of 3 months.
I have to ask this question. We spoke a little bit earlier about OPEX reduction, but deflection of call centres. But I'm guessing to make a community that is effective and works, that involves community management, involves investment. Is it really a false economy? Do you need as much investment to create a great community as you do the cost advantages of call centre deflections? Are there real cost benefits, or what's your view on that?
I think the cost of setting up a community should not be underestimated. The communities require community managers. So if you are looking at a membership of, say, 100,000 members, then you're probably looking at 10 community managers. So you're looking at community managers managing between 10 and 15,000 members per head.
Yes.
So when you actually start to look at the cost of putting in the technology, engaging the customers, going through the channels and setting it up, then yes, in the first sort of 6 to 12 months there is an investment, and therefore don't expect to be making any great savings in the first couple of weeks of having an online community. But as you build up your membership, and as you build up the interaction and the knowledge in the community, then the value of the community increases exponentially as it goes along, because the more members you've got that are interacting with each other or with the community managers themselves, then the richer the content that you get back. So the more you put into it, the more you're going to get out of it, but it has to be very, very focused. If you start to dilute the conversation, then the membership will go away because they will be unclear about what the focus of the community is.
Okay, let's go on to product development then. The customer-centric product development framework that you developed here. Do you just want to just do an overview of this?
Yeah, I mean, the idea behind this is that if you can engage some of your customers in the life cycle of a product, then the likelihood of you being able to get the product launched faster is much higher. And the reason behind that is that by engaging a group of customers in the early stages, the ideation side of things, it might not be the customer's idea, it might be the internal team's idea, but getting the customers to give you feedback on that idea, to getting you to help test out in the early stages, to then take it through the alpha testing and beta testing, all of those different stages, by engaging customers in that, they start to see the evolution of that product, and they become invested in that product as something that they have been part of. So when it comes to launching, you can actually launch the product earlier to a broader group of customers, because you will have an established customer base who have seen its evolution and will allow them to be able to come out and say, actually, we were involved in the development of it, and it has improved over the last 6 months, and this is the first version of it, but it will get better because we've seen how it's developed. And if you get involved and you test it and you put up with the fact it's not 100%, we'll all have a better product in the next 3 to 6 months. And that in itself, having customers engaged in the launch, means that they have bought into it emotionally and will help support you when you launch the product out into the wider market.
Yes, and is this Starbucks do this? I think you said earlier. Is this the kind of model they work against?
Starbucks do this, and sort of some of the larger telcos do this, and media companies use this as well. If you look at on giffgaff, you'll find on giffgaff's website they talk about some of their new ideas and their products, and they get their customers involved in the product development lifecycle quite early on, or they use the customers to help develop their existing products. Customers tend not to come out with blue sky thinking; they tend to come out with effective improvements to what's already there.
Yes.
So if if you're looking to create a community where a customer is going to come up with your next big idea, then that's unlikely. But what they will do is they'll help you improve your idea or help they improve the products that are currently in play.
Okay. Now let's go on to the big thing, customer loyalty then. And you have this social conversation loyalty model. Can you just maybe describe how this is designed? What does it mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think if we go back and look at customer loyalty from the very beginning, the first way that customers were rewarded for repeat purchases was by having simple Green Shield stamps. So you would come into the supermarket, whatever, and you were given some stamps in exchange for that. And that mechanism still exists today. So we go into a coffee shop and you buy a coffee and you get a stamp on a card, and when you've received that, you get a free coffee after you've got 10 stamps or whatever. And the same thing's happening now in bookshops and also, small chocolate shops, etc. And that very much creates like a very casual approach to buying products. You go in, you buy your product, and then you walk away again, and it's very much a reward for your loyalty for buying things. Now, those stamps don't offer an organisation much information. They don't know who I am, they just know that I've bought 10 cups of coffee and I've exchanged a card for that. So the next stage in sort of loyalty is to look at the points. So I start to collect my points on my British Airways Executive card, or my Tesco's Club card, or my Sainsbury's Nectar points, and all of those they're there to enhance me going into those, to using those services on a regular basis. So it makes me a much more regular customer, and so I get rewarded by points. The organisation starts to learn a little bit more about me, and I become more regular because they give me offers which are related to what I'm buying and how I'm purchasing things. And those are the traditional points mean prizes type of loyalty programs which are out there. However, what we're seeing now is that as customers are engaging in conversations with brands, then those conversations are making customers more engaged. And by that, it means that they're becoming repeatedly and on a regular basis returning to the community or returning to the social channels, and they're engaging with other customers as well as employees on that across that brand. And that's what we're seeing with Starbucks, that's what we're seeing with Sephora, and those type of organisations where they're bringing the conversation to the customer, and that's making customers much more engaged in the brand over a longer period of time. With community members generally stay loyal for in excess of 2 years. So what happens is you have a long-term loyalty and engaged customers around conversations. And then the next type of business is actually where social's in the DNA of the business. So giffgaff is a typical model where it has been built as a social business model, where at the heart of the business model is an online community. But other organisations like Innocent Drinks, they too have social in the DNA. They invite their customers to come and knock on their door and come in and talk to the employees, and they'll give you a smoothie if you do turn up at Innocent Towers. And so they want to involve their customers much more in the creation of products, in the business, and be much more open and available to them. So it makes them much more collaborative, and that again enhances loyalty even more. And so what we're seeing is that, as you move across this, become more social and more engaged with your customers, then they become more committed to you as an organisation, your products and your brands.
Okay, and I think you build this out more in this framework here. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes, that's correct. I mean, basically what it does is it looks at where the business is focused. If it's looking at a simple loyalty model, which is your stamps on your card, then there's very little interaction and there's very little insight coming back to the business.
Yes.
As we evolve up, move to transactional ones where you start to get buyer behavior, where it's like the Tesco's loyalty card, you can actually, they can predict what customers are going to buy in their shops, and therefore they can, shorten their supply chain, enable they've got the right products on their shelves when customers require it. As you move across into conversational, you can start to move away from just the points mechanism, but you can start to mix up points, conversation, you can interact with customers, and you can then start to influence their buyer behavior much richer. And then once social becomes part of your DNA and conversations take place across customers, across different silos within your organizations, product, marketing, service, support, then you start to really reap the benefits from a customer insight point of view and a loyalty to the brand.
Good. Okay, and what companies are best? Where is social DNA? We've mentioned giffgaff and Starbucks.
And Innocent Drinks, I think, and giffgaff.
Yes.
And companies like Airbnb, where it's about engaging, it's a platform. The new models that are coming out where you're having a community which are sort of sharing information and they're being enabled by an underlying platform whose focus is on connection and communication. Those new products, and we'll see more of them coming up over the next few years.
Exactly, it's using the assets, I guess, Uber as well. That sort of, you are a connection platform rather than holding all the assets, and I guess you make your money from that. But for that's fine, I guess, for startups. But what about for big organisations? Is this a problem for them to get to that social DNA stage?
I think if you look at what Telefonica did with giffgaff, then they've used that model within their organisation to prove that the model works, and now they're moving that model out into other markets where they have they have mobile operators in South America, for example, who are using a similar model. So what they're doing is they're taking that model and moving it out into the marketplace. By doing that, more established organisations have the ability to start to educate themselves internally about how this model works and then be able to move it across the business. You're not going to take a legacy business that's been working in a particular way for the last 20, 30 years and change them overnight. But what you can do is you can show them through pockets of innovation and working business models that this is a way forward, and they can demonstrate it and find a way to integrate it into their current business planning.
Okay, now let's go on to social media customer service. So the social business context model, just give us a little overview on this, thanks.
Yeah, I mean, the idea behind this is that, what happened originally is that social media as a team was set up, and it was generally around the sort of PR and marketing side of things, and then we started to look at, in the customer support model, it became very easy to prove the value of it in customer support through deflection of calls out the call centre and reducing the cost of servicing customers. And so once you've created that team, you can create a hub which allows you to be able to listen to the conversation, be able to prioritise it, but then to direct it into the different departments within an organisation. And that's what we're starting to see now. We're starting to develop social as a tool that the whole business can use, and and each organisation is implementing it in its own way. But the idea is to have some sort of hub, which could be a distributed hub, as in you may have members from the product team, the customer service, the marketing, the PR team, all in the same part of the same team, but their focus is to listen and to prioritise stuff, prioritise the information that's coming out of the social data.
Good. And I think we just have a little sort of telco brand identifying, I think, probably where the various points of interest are here. This is just a social customer service example. And in terms of moving on a little bit to best practice mapping, because you've got a few interesting models that I'd like to look at here. So first of all, the social media maturity roadmap. If you can just describe this a little bit for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, I think like most business models, and this is one that sort of come out of some thinking from not just myself but other people that are in this space, where we look at how people start to look at social media. So to begin with, the social media is very much ad hoc, so there isn't really a business purpose, somebody's listening to it, there isn't really a budget in place, but people seem to think that it was a good idea, so let's have a listen and see what happens, and it's very experimental. Then once people start to sort of realise that there is some value in this, they start to sort of put in some pilot projects and have some resources and put some budgets against it. And this in itself allows you to be able to start to put some measures against it and say, well, actually this pilot worked or it didn't, and so you can start to see where the value is. And then the next area is to then start to become much more structured about it, and this is where we start to see the customer service coming into play, the marketing team starting to use it for the impact of a product launch or a marketing campaign. So we can then start to sort of see that these projects are much more formal and they have a specific purpose. And then once you start to have a pool of projects which are returning some results, you can then actually start to look at it, making it a much more managed process. So then you start to bring your hub together, and then you start to put some more measures against it, and you create your own social media center, and then you can start to put in some measures in there which you can actually show back to the executives. Okay, and finally optimized, I guess. Yeah, and that's it. You know, once you've been up and running for a while, you start to work out how to make it better for your business, and and that takes time. But I mean, I think where most companies are at the moment, they're probably between phase 1 and 2. Sure. Okay. There are a few people that are moving into optimize, but that's very much in the probably around the customer service space, where people have been doing this now for about the last 4 or 5 years. I think you've got a little bit more detail here that just builds out those various stages and what it means from operationalize, listen, engage, measure, integrate. We've got about 7 minutes. Julie, any key points on this one? Or? Not really. I mean, I think it's very much like any other framework. How do you start to get people from the beginning to actually having something that's deriving business value across multiple departments? And it is starting to, you start to engage with something, you put a structure in place. Once you've got your structure in place, you start to put some management, and then you start to optimize it. And it's just key areas we look at, how do we listen, engage, measure, and integrate, and then once we've done all that, we can start to innovate as well in the business. But you need to get the foundations in place first. Exactly, and I think this just gives a similar sort of a process as a different sort of as a flow. Is anything different here on this that's worth pointing out? I think no, not really. It's more about looking at, you listen, you acknowledge it with the customer, you then might collaborate with the customer or internal employees, you look to resolve the issue, or you look to respond, or you look to find out whether you're going to innovate, and then you can reuse the knowledge that you've created. So it's one of the ways of just sort of managing that data and the knowledge you learn. The final bit is the gap analysis. So I think we've got 3 slides here. Maybe you just want to have a couple of minutes just describing what this is all about, please, Julie. Yeah, I mean, with anything, you want to try and understand where you are as an organisation, and also how you map against what people are currently doing in your own industry. So what this does is it gives you the ability to look at, where you are as your organisation, how you map against where your industry is looking at social media channels, whether they're looking at independent public forums, whether they're looking at social listening tools, or whether you've got your own on-domain community. Now, telco is one of the areas where they're very heavily looking at or using online communities, and so therefore, a lot of the companies in the UK, especially, and some in the US as well, they're very much using all of these things as an industry best practice. Okay, we've got a little bit more detail here on the same gap analysis between how you integrate call center, command center, business systems, and KPIs. As we mentioned before, call center deflection, email deflection, costs, and also the revenue side, and I suppose the feeling side, the NPS CSAT measures as well, perception side, as key KPIs of use. And organisations are starting to do that now. So, as a telco looking at this, who's new to this space, then you can look at this and say, well, actually, there are organisations benefiting and using this as their industry best practice. And just the final slide, which is defining the social media project workstream. So I guess this just highlights the key questions Yeah,
around people,
and the
process.
areas that you need to look at.
Exactly. Okay. Julie, is social media just a complaints channel though? Because one of the questions I get back is, well, we use social media, but people are just going to be raising complaints all the time and trouble tickets. Is that really what its benefit is, an extended complaints channel? We spoke a little about innovation, or is it wrong to think of it just as a negative complaints area?
I think in some industry the perception is that it is negative, but if you think about it, generally every day people do have conversations about your brand, and they will have positive conversations and they will have negative ones.
Yes.
There will always be people that will complain, and if there is an easy way for someone to complain, people say, oh, it's easy, we'll just put it on Twitter, shove in a hashtag brand and then complain,
Yes.
and we'll get a response. And yes, that is one element of it. However, there is a much richer value to come out with engaging customers on social media channels, and it's less about engaging them on the channels like Facebook and Twitter. Those are channels which are, it's almost like, yes, you can come and knock on the door, but if you're interested in my brand, these are other things I would like to talk to you about. And if you're happy to spend the time, then come to my community or come to my Facebook page, and we'll have a richer conversation. The real conversations take place on the online communities. And then from there, you can identify engaged customers who can actually help your brand in multiple ways. You know, for example, there's some people on, if you go into the Sky community, which is a technical support community, you'll find customers on there who, if someone says, I've got a problem with my set-top box, they'll say, oh, actually, if you go and look on this page, you'll find out that your set-top box may be out of date. If you go here, this is where you can go and get it upgraded and how it will work. So they act as also as a sales mechanism too. So if they're engaging with your brand, they're an advocate because they care in some way.
Fantastic. Now, Julie, we've just a couple of minutes left now. Could you just give your, it's been fantastic and very informative. If people wish to contact you, could you just give your contact details, please?
Yeah, the easiest way to contact me is via my email address, which is julie@purplespinnaker.com, or they can contact me via my LinkedIn profile, which is Julie Walker 11 on LinkedIn, and my Twitter is JulieWUK.
Fantastic. And having used Julie in consulting, research, advice in this area, I can certainly recommend Julie for her stellar knowledge, and I really appreciate your time spent today going through this. Thank you, Julie.
Thanks very much, Stephen. I appreciate your time.
Not a problem.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.